Jake Morrison sat in his chair and looked around the large meeting room. The walls were made of smooth metal that reflected the bright lights above. 12 different alien species sat at the curved table, each one looking very different from the others. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like they were made of crystal. Jake had been coming to these peace talks for 3 months now. Every day felt longer than the last. He was the human ambassador, sent here to represent Earth and all the human colonies. But it seemed like nobody wanted to listen to what he had to say. The Zephyrian delegate sat across from him. His name was Vextalar, and he looked like a walking piece of blue crystal. His body made tiny ringing sounds when he moved. Jake had tried to be friendly with him, but Vextalar always acted like Jake was a child who didn't understand important things. Captain, Lisa Brooks stood near the big window that showed the stars outside. She was Jake's military advisor and had been a soldier for 20 years. Lisa had fought in 3 different wars and saved more lives than she could count. But here, the aliens treated her like she was just a decoration. The meeting started the same way it always did. The Thornian representative, who looked like a giant insect with too many arms, began reading from a long list of complaints. The Altarians, who were tall and thin with silver skin, nodded along like they agreed with everything being said. Jake pulled out his tablet and looked at the proposal he had written. It was about protecting the trade routes that connected different parts of the galaxy. Pirates had been attacking merchant ships more and more often. Jake's plan would use human ships to patrol the most dangerous areas and keep everyone safe. When it was Jake's turn to speak, he stood up and cleared his throat. "I would like to present our proposal for trade route security," he said. His voice was calm and professional, even though he felt frustrated inside. Vextalar made a sound like breaking glass, which meant he was laughing. "Young species should watch and learn before they try to help," he said. The translator device on the table made his words sound even more insulting in human language. The other aliens around the table started making their own sounds of agreement. The Thornian clicked his mandibles, which was how his species showed they were amused. The Altarians just stared at Jake with their large, dark eyes. "We have been traveling between stars for thousands of years," said the Altarian Chancellor. Her voice was high and musical, but her words were cold. "Humans have barely left their home system. What could you possibly teach us about space travel?" Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "We may be new to space, but we have experience with security and protection. Our military has proven itself many times." The Thornian representative waved 2 of his arms dismissively. "Your wars are primitive and brutal. We have evolved beyond such crude methods. We solve problems with intelligence and diplomacy." Lisa Brooks stepped forward from her place by the window. "Those crude methods have kept Earth safe for the last 50 years, she said. Her voice was sharp like a blade. "While you were having diplomatic meetings, we were fighting off the raider clans that were attacking our colonies." The aliens looked at each other and made various sounds of disapproval. Jake could see they thought Lisa was being rude for speaking, when she hadn't been asked to. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal body began to glow brighter, which meant he was getting angry. "This is exactly what we mean. Humans are too quick to turn to violence. You think every problem can be solved with guns and ships?" "We don't think that," Jake said. "But we also don't think every problem can be solved by talking. Sometimes you need to be ready to fight to protect what matters." The meeting went on for 6 more hours. Jake presented 3 different proposals, each one carefully thought out and researched. The aliens dismissed all of them without even reading the details. When Jake suggested that humans could help with mining operations in the asteroid fields, the Thornians said human technology was too simple. When he offered to share Earth's medical knowledge, the Altarians said they already knew everything. They needed to know about healing. The worst moment came near the end of the day. The Altarian Chancellor stood up and activated a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy with different colored areas marking each species' territory. The human territory was very small compared to the others, just 12 star systems, clustered around Earth. "We have been discussing this among ourselves," the Chancellor said. "We believe that humanity needs more time to develop before taking on greater responsibilities." We propose limiting human expansion to your current systems for the next 100 years. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. You want to cage us in our own space? We prefer to think of it as guided development, said Vextaler. Like parents watching over their children until they are ready to make good decisions. Lisa Brooks took a step forward, her hand moving toward her weapon. Jake held up his hand to stop her. The room became very quiet. Even the aliens seemed to realize they had gone too far. Jake looked around the table at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked smug, others looked uncomfortable, but none of them looked like they planned to change their minds. These beings had called him here to talk about peace and cooperation, but they had never intended to treat humans as equals. The Terran Federation formally withdraws from these proceedings, Jake said. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard every word. We will return to our territory and think about whether we want to participate in galactic affairs at all. He picked up his tablet and walked toward the door. Lisa followed him, her boots making sharp sounds on the metal floor. Behind them, the aliens began talking all at once, their voices mixing together in a sound like a broken machine. As the door closed behind them, Jake could hear Vextalar saying something about teaching humans their place. He smiled grimly. The aliens thought they had won. They had no idea what they had just done. Humans were about to show the galaxy what happened when you treated your friends like enemies, and the aliens were going to learn that some lessons were more expensive than others. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison walked out of the peace talks. Captain Danny Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his ship, the UTS Horizon, reading his new orders for the 3rd time. The message was short, but very clear. Instead of exploring new star systems like he usually did, he was supposed to make detailed maps of all the resources near human space. Danny had been a ship captain for 15 years. He knew the difference between normal exploration and military preparation. These new orders felt like getting ready for something big. He folded the message and put it in his pocket. Set course for the Proxima mining belt, he told his crew. We have work to do. On Earth, President Karen Williams sat in her office looking out at the city below. The tall buildings reached up toward the sky like metal fingers. She had been thinking about the aliens' insult for weeks now. They wanted to treat humans like children who needed to be watched and controlled. She pressed a button on her desk and spoke into the communication device. Send word to all department heads. I want to see them in the main conference room in 1 hour. The conference room was deep underground, protected by thick walls and electronic shields that kept out spying devices. When all the important people had arrived, Karen stood up and looked at each of them carefully. The galactic community has made their feelings about us very clear, she said. They think we are children playing games that adults should handle. Fine. Let us show them what happens when the children stop sharing their toys. Dr. Ben Carter, the head of the Terran Science Consortium, raised his hand. He was a thin man with gray hair and glasses that made his eyes look bigger. What exactly are you asking us to do, Madam President? I want you to implement Protocol 7 across all our research facilities, Karen said. End all joint projects with alien institutions. Bring our people home. From now on, we work alone. Ben nodded slowly. He understood what this meant. For the past 10 years, human scientists had been working with aliens on dozens of important projects. The quantum communication network was the biggest one. It would let people talk instantly across the galaxy without waiting for signals to travel through space. The aliens had been very excited about it because human mathematics made it possible. Now they would have to finish it without human help. Admiral Helen Foster was sitting at the other end of the table. She was a tough woman who had commanded space fleets for 20 years. Her hair was white and her face had scars from an old battle. She spoke in a voice like steel. What about our naval units? We have ships patrolling with alien fleets in 17 different sectors. Bring them home, Karen said. All of them. The aliens told us our methods were primitive and brutal. Let them protect their own space with their advanced diplomacy. Helen smiled, but it was not a happy smile. The Kepler Nebula routes are going to be very interesting without our patrols. Dr. Carter looked worried. Madam President, if we cut off all cooperation, it will hurt our relationships with species that were friendly to us. The friendly species stood by and watched while we were insulted, Karen replied. They had their chance to speak up for us. They chose not to. She walked to the big screen on the wall and turned it on. It showed a map of the galaxy with all the different territories marked in different colors. The human space looked very small, but it was in a very good location. Many important trade routes pass through or near human systems. We are going to show the galaxy something they have forgotten, Karen said. We are going to show them that Earth did not become the center of human civilization by accident. We are here because we are strong, smart, and we do not give up when things get hard. Over the next few weeks, changes began happening all across human space. The research station on Mars sent home all the alien scientists who had been working there. The joint mining operation in the asteroid belt became a human-only project. The medical exchange program that had been teaching alien doctors about human healing methods was quietly ended. Captain Rodriguez finished his survey of the Proxima system and moved on to the next one. His ship's sensors found rare metals, energy, sources, and strategic positions that could be used for military bases. All of this information was sent back to Earth and stored in secret files. On the space station New Geneva, Commander Steve Parker watched the long-range sensors that monitored alien communications. He had been a signals intelligence officer for 12 years, and he was very good at his job. Lately, he had been noticing interesting patterns in the alien messages. The Thornians were having trouble with their automated defense systems. Those systems had been designed with help from human engineers who were experts at making things work, even when they broke down. Without the humans to maintain them, the systems were starting to fail. The Zephyrian colonies were reporting problems with their food production. Their farming machines were very advanced, but they needed constant small repairs and adjustments. Human technicians had been handling those repairs because they were good at fixing things with whatever materials were available. The aliens called this skill primitive tinkering, but it kept their machines running. Dr. Carter stood in his laboratory looking at the quantum communicator prototype. It was beautiful and complex, covered in crystals and metal that seemed to glow with its own light. But without the alien components, it was just an expensive decoration. The aliens had the hardware, but humans had the mathematical formulas that made it work. He smiled and made a note in his computer. Let the aliens try to finish it without human help. They would learn that some things could not be solved with just advanced technology. Admiral Foster received reports from her captains as they returned from their patrol duties. The alien fleet commanders had been surprised when the human ships left their posts. Some had been angry. Others had seemed confused. A few had asked when the humans would be coming back. Tell them we are going home to think about our primitive and brutal methods, she had instructed her captains. Maybe we will come back when we have learned how to be more civilized. President Williams read all the reports and smiled. The aliens thought they had taught humanity a lesson about knowing their place in the galaxy. They had no idea that the lesson was just beginning, and they were the ones who were going to learn it. 6 months had passed since the humans left the peace talks. The galaxy was starting to feel different, though most aliens did not understand why yet. Captain Alex Turner sat in his command chair aboard the UTS Shadow, watching the chaos unfold in the Kepler system through his ship's sensors. The Shadow was a special kind of ship. It could hide from other sensors and watch without being seen. Alex had been ordered to observe the alien trade routes and report what he found. What he was seeing made him shake his head in disbelief. 3 merchant ships had been attacked by pirates in the last week. The ships were burning wrecks floating in space, their crews either dead or captured. Before the humans left, these routes had been safe. Human patrol ships had quietly dealt with pirates before they could cause major problems. "Captain," said his communications officer, "I am picking up another distress call. Looks like the Thornian freighter Golden Wing is under attack." Alex watched through his view screen as the large cargo ship tried to fight off 5 smaller pirate vessels. The Thornian ship had weapons, but they were designed for trading, not fighting. The pirates were tearing it apart piece by piece. "Are we going to help them, sir?" asked his weapons officer. Alex wanted to help. Every part of him wanted to charge in and save the innocent crew, but his orders were clear. Watch and report. Do not interfere. The aliens had said they did not need Human help with security. No, Alex said quietly. We observe only. The Thornian ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Alex made a note in his log and sent the report back to Earth. The aliens were learning that words could not stop bullets. On the industrial planet Vega Prime, Chief Engineer Malik Okafor stood in front of the massive atmospheric processor that had been turning the planet's poisonous air into something people could breathe. The machine was as big as a city block and reached up into the sky like a metal mountain. Now it was silent and cold. Malik was an Altarian, but he had worked with human engineers for 3 years. The humans had designed most of the processors, control systems because they were experts at making complex machines work reliably. The Altarians had thought the human designs were crude and simple, but they had worked perfectly for 5 years. Now the humans were gone, and the machine was broken. The Altarian engineers could not figure out how to fix it. The human systems were simple on the surface, but they were connected in ways that were hard to understand. Every part affected every other part in complex patterns. Have you found the problem yet? Asked Governor Sektar, who had come to check on their progress. Malik looked at the diagnostic screens that showed hundreds of error codes. The humans built this system to fix itself when small problems occurred. But now something big is wrong, and we do not know how their self-repair systems work. The governor's silver skin turned darker, which meant he was angry. Surely our advanced technology can solve this problem. We are thousands of years more advanced than the humans. Advanced does not always mean better, Malik said quietly. The humans built this to be repaired by anyone with basic tools. Our systems require specialist equipment that we do not have here. The air on Vega Prime was slowly turning poisonous again. 2 million colonists would have to be evacuated if the processor could not be fixed soon. The Altarians were discovering that sometimes the simple solution was the best solution. In the Zephyrian home system, Council Prime Vextaler stood before a crowd of angry citizens. His crystal body was glowing bright red, which meant he was very stressed. The people were shouting questions at him and he did not have good answers. The food shortage had started small. A few farms had problems with their automated equipment. Then more farms had the same problems. Now half the agricultural worlds in Zephyrian space were producing less food than they needed. Why can the machines not be repaired? Shouted someone. From the crowd, Vextaler's body made the ringing sound that meant he was nervous. Our technicians are working on the problem. The machines are very complex. The humans used to fix them, called another voice. Where are the humans now? We do not need human help, Vextalar said, but his voice was not confident. Their methods were primitive. We will find a better solution. The truth was that the humans had been maintaining the Zephyrian farming equipment for 2 years. The machines were designed by the Zephyrians, but they broke down often and needed constant small repairs. Human technicians had a talent for fixing things with whatever materials were available, often in ways that were not in the instruction manuals. The Zephyrians had called this primitive tinkering and had been embarrassed that their advanced machines needed such crude fixes. Now they were learning that working solutions were more important than elegant ones. Captain Rodriguez completed his survey of the Centauri system and prepared his report. The system had enough rare metals to build 1,000 warships. It also had perfect locations for military bases that could control 3 major trade routes. All of this information went into the secret human files. Danny had been watching the news reports from across the galaxy. Pirate attacks were up 60%. Several important trade routes were now considered too dangerous for regular shipping. The interstellar economy was starting to shake. "Sir," said his science officer, "I am detecting unusual energy readings from the Altarian system. It looks like they are having power problems." Danny nodded. The Altarians used a complex energy distribution system that required constant monitoring and adjustment. Human engineers had been helping to maintain it because they were good at spotting problems before they became serious. Without that help, the system was starting to fail. On Earth, President Williams read the daily intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. The aliens were discovering that the humans they had dismissed as primitive were actually the glue that held galactic civilization together. Dr. Carter had finished his analysis of the situation. The aliens became dependent on our adaptability without realizing it, he told the president. They are specialists who are very good at doing one thing. We are generalists who are good at solving unexpected problems. Their rigid thinking worked. Fine when everything was stable, added Admiral Foster. But when systems start failing, they need people who can think outside the rules. The president looked at the galaxy map on her wall. Red markers showed places where problems were getting worse. Most of them were in areas where humans had been working before the withdrawal. How long before they ask for help? She asked. The Thornians are already having internal discussions about it, replied Dr. Carter. The Altarians are too proud, but their colonies are starting to complain. The Zephyrians are trying to hire human technicians as private contractors. And our response? We are too busy with our own projects to take outside work, Admiral Foster said with a smile. The aliens had wanted to teach humans about their place in the galaxy. Instead, they were learning that their place was a lot smaller and more fragile than they had thought. The humans they had dismissed as children were actually the foundation that kept their civilization from falling apart. And the foundation had just walked away. 1 year had passed since the humans walked away from the peace talks. Commander Steve Parker stood in the communications center of the Deep Space Monitoring Station New Geneva, watching the screens that showed alien message traffic across the galaxy. What he saw made him almost feel sorry for them. The Thornian government was sending desperate messages to mercenary groups, offering huge payments for protection services. Their own military could not handle the pirate problem that had grown out of control. Trade ships were being attacked every day, and the Thornian economy was falling apart. Commander, said his assistant, Lieutenant Carol Wright, the Altarian Chancellor is sending another emergency message to their colonies. It looks like 3 more terraforming projects have failed completely. Steve nodded and made notes in his daily report. The Altarians were learning that their beautiful, complex machines needed someone who could think creatively when things went wrong. Their own engineers were trained to follow exact procedures, but they did not know what to do when the procedures did not work. The Zephyrian communications were the most interesting. Steve could see messages between their government and private companies, asking if anyone knew how to hire human technicians. The messages offered massive amounts of money, but there were no human responses. Earth had made it clear that its people were too busy with their own projects to work for aliens. Dr. Rachel Davis sat in her office at Cambridge Station, finishing her research report about what was happening to the galaxy. Rachel was a xenosociologist, which meant she studied how different alien species interacted with each other. Her report was going to explain something that the aliens had never understood about themselves. She typed the final paragraphs on her computer. The human species served as a cultural bridge between alien civilizations that were fundamentally incompatible. Without humans acting as translators and mediators, the natural conflicts between these species are emerging and destroying their alliance. It was true. The Thornians were insects who thought in terms of group behavior and hive minds. The Altarians were individuals who valued personal achievement and perfection. The Zephyrians were crystal beings who processed information in rigid patterns. These species had almost nothing in common except their need to trade with each other. Humans had been the universal translators not just for language but for ideas and cultures. When a Thornian commander could not understand why Altarian pilots acted independently, human officers explained both points of view and found ways to make them work together. When Zephyrian logic systems could not handle unexpected problems, human technicians used creative solutions that worked even if they were not perfect. Now that the humans were gone, the aliens were discovering that they did not really like or understand each other. Their alliance had only worked because humans had been quietly solving their cultural conflicts for years. Captain Rodriguez finished his latest survey mission and returned to Earth. He met with Admiral Foster to deliver his report in person. The news was not good for the aliens, but it was very good for humanity. The entire Kepler Trade Alliance is falling apart, Danny told the Admiral. 40% of their shipping has been destroyed or captured by pirates. The remaining ships are too scared to use the main trade routes. Admiral Foster looked at the star charts Danny had brought. Red marks showed where attacks had happened, and there were a lot of red marks. What about their military response? They hired mercenary fleets, but the mercenaries are not reliable. Some of them just take the money and run away when there is real fighting. Others are not much better than the pirates they are supposed to fight. The admiral smiled grimly. Human patrol ships had prevented most of these problems by being in the right place at the right time, and by actually caring about protecting innocent people. Mercenaries only cared about getting paid. On the industrial world of Titan VII, the massive factories that built starship engines had gone silent. The factories were owned by a joint venture between 4 different alien species, but they depended on human workers to keep the complex systems running smoothly. Factory manager Jen Taylor had been the only human left when the withdrawal order came. She had trained alien workers for 3 years, but they had never learned to handle the unexpected problems that came up every day in a complex manufacturing operation. Now the main assembly line was broken, and nobody knew how to fix it. The alien workers could follow the repair procedures perfectly, but the problem was not in any of their manuals. It required someone who could look at the whole system and figure out what was really wrong. The factory owners were losing millions of credits every day. They had sent messages to Earth begging for help, offering to pay any amount of money. The response from Earth was always the same. Human technical personnel are currently unavailable for outside assignments. President Williams received a message. That made her laugh out loud. It was from the Galactic Council, and it was not an apology or a request for help. It was a demand. The Terran Federation is required to resume its obligations to galactic stability, the message said. Your withdrawal from cooperative programs is causing serious problems that affect all civilized species. You must return to your duties immediately. Karen showed the message to her advisors during their morning meeting. Dr. Carter shook his head in amazement. They still do not understand. They think we owe them something. What should our response be? Asked Admiral Foster. Karen thought for a moment, then smiled. Send them a very short message, just 2 words. What obligations? The alien response came back within hours. It was much longer and much angrier. The aliens listed all the ways that humans were supposed to help with galactic security, trade, protection, technical maintenance, and diplomatic mediation. They acted as if these were laws that humans had to follow. Karen's second response was even shorter. Says who? The truth was that humans had never signed any treaties that required them to do these things. They had volunteered to help because it seemed like the right thing to do. The aliens had become so used to human help that they forgot it was voluntary. Commander, Parker intercepted more alien communications that showed how desperate the situation was becoming. The Thornian colonies were running out of food because their supply ships could not get through pirate-controlled space. The Altarian terraforming projects were failing one by one, forcing millions of colonists to evacuate their new homes. The Zephyrian government was facing riots as their economy collapsed. But the most interesting message was between the leaders of the 3 main alien species. They were planning to meet in person to discuss what they called the human problem. For the first time in galactic history, the aliens were coming together not to celebrate their alliance, but to figure out how to deal with the mess they had created. Dr. Davis finished reading the alien message transcripts and updated her report. The aliens are finally realizing that their civilization was more fragile than they thought, she wrote. They built their society on the assumption that humans would always be available to solve their problems. Now they are learning what happens when that assumption is wrong. Rachel looked out the window of her office at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, alien leaders were probably having emergency meetings and trying to figure out how to save their falling civilization. They had thought they were teaching humans a lesson about knowing their place in the galaxy. Instead, they had learned that humans were not just another species to be managed and controlled. Humans were the foundation that their entire galactic community was built on. And foundations, once removed, were very hard to replace. The aliens were about to discover that pride was an expensive luxury, and they were running out of money to pay for it. The biggest crisis in galactic history was finally forcing the aliens to face reality. War had broken out between the Thornians and Altarians over mining rights in the Vega system. The Zephyrian colonies had declared independence from their home government. 3 smaller species had left the Galactic Alliance completely and were trying to make deals with human traders. Chancellor Prime Mordak of the Altarians stood on the bridge of his flagship as it approached Earth's solar system. He had never thought he would be traveling to human space as someone asking for help. His silver skin was darker than usual, showing his stress and anger. Behind his ship came the largest diplomatic fleet in galactic history. 12 different species had sent their most important leaders to Earth. They came not as conquerors or teachers, but as people who desperately needed something that only humans could provide. Jake Morrison sat in the conference room of Luna Station, which orbited Earth's moon. He was no longer just an ambassador. President Williams had made him Secretary of Galactic Affairs, which meant he was in charge of all human relationships with alien species. It was a job that had not existed 2 years ago because humans had not been important enough to need their own galactic policy. Now Jake held more power than any human in history. The alien leaders who had once dismissed him as a primitive child were coming to him as supplicants. Captain Mary Collins watched the alien fleet from the command deck of the UTS Independence, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. The alien ships had their weapons powered down and their shields lowered. It was a sign of surrender that would have been impossible to imagine when Jake had walked out of the peace talks. The Independence was not alone. 20 human warships surrounded the alien fleet, not as guards but as a reminder. Earth had used the last 2 years to build a military that could defend human space against any threat. The aliens were seeing the results of human engineering and determination working together. President Williams stood in her office looking at the reports from across human space. 50 star systems now flew human flags, compared to the 12 they had controlled 2 years ago. The new systems had been claimed by human survey teams who had been mapping resources while the aliens fought among themselves. Human colonies were thriving. Human technology had improved faster in 2 years of isolation than in the previous decade of alien cooperation. Human ships controlled the most important trade routes in the galaxy because human patrol fleets actually protected merchants instead of demanding bribes. The door to her office opened and Jake Morrison entered. He had just finished the first day of negotiations with the alien leaders and he looked tired but satisfied. "How did it go?" Karen asked. "About as well as we expected," Jake replied. "They started by demanding that we resume our old duties. When I told them those duties never existed, they got angry. When I showed them our new terms, they got angrier." Karen smiled. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them the same thing they told us 2 years ago. I said that young species should watch and learn before they try to contribute to important discussions." The new treaty that Jake had presented to the aliens was very different from the old relationships. It was called the Terra Accords, and it treated humanity not as a junior partner, but as the most important member of a reformed galactic community. Human space would expand to include 50 star systems, making it larger than any alien territory. Human representatives would have permanent seats on all important councils and committees. Most importantly, the clause that had tried to restrict human development was replaced with requirements that aliens share their technology and respect human independence. Chancellor Mordak had read the treaty 3 times before he understood what it really meant. "You're asking us to treat you as equals," he had said to Jake. "No," Jake had replied. "We are telling you that we are equals. The treaty just makes it official." Dr. Ben Carter stood in his laboratory on Mars, looking at the completed quantum communication device. It was smaller and more efficient than the original design because human engineers had spent 2 years improving it without alien interference. The device could send messages instantly across the galaxy, and only humans knew how to build it. The aliens had tried to finish their own version, but they had failed completely. Their advanced technology was useless without the human mathematics that made it work. Now they were offering huge amounts of money for the right to use human quantum communicators. Admiral Foster read the latest intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The Thornian government had collapsed and been replaced by a military council that was desperate for human help with security. The Altarian colonies were evacuating failed terraforming projects and begging human engineers to come fix their machines. The Zephyrian rebellion was spreading because their leaders could not solve basic economic problems without human advisors. "How many species have officially requested human assistance?" she asked her aide. 14 so far, Admiral. They are offering exclusive trade agreements, territorial concessions, and technology transfers. Helen smiled. 2 years ago, these same species had treated humans like annoying children. Now they were competing with each other to offer humans the best deals. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. Some alien leaders tried to be proud and demand better terms. Jake simply told them that the treaty was not negotiable and that humans had plenty of other options. When the Zephyrian representative threatened to leave, Jake wished him a safe journey home and reminded him that human quantum communicators would not be available to species outside the Terra Accords. The Zephyrian representative signed the treaty that afternoon. One by one, the alien leaders accepted the new reality. They signed the Terra Accords not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. Their civilizations were falling apart without human help, and humans were the only ones who could put them back together. President Williams hosted the signing ceremony in Geneva, with representatives from around the galaxy watching on quantum communicators. She wore a simple blue dress and spoke in a calm, professional voice. "Humanity learned something valuable during our time alone," she said. "We learned that we do not need the galaxy to survive and prosper, but apparently the galaxy needs us." She signed the treaty with a pen made from metal mined in human space. Each alien leader signed after her, their faces showing defeat and resignation. "This treaty establishes a new relationship between humanity and our galactic neighbors," Karen continued. "A relationship based on mutual respect and shared benefit, not on old assumptions about who should lead and who should follow." As the alien leaders prepared to return to their home systems, they carried with them copies of the Terra Accords and a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. Humans were no longer the primitive newcomers who needed guidance and supervision. They were the essential partners whose cooperation was necessary for galactic civilization to function. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the alien ships depart. 2 years ago, he had walked out of a peace conference feeling angry and frustrated. Now he was watching those same aliens return home to implement a treaty that gave humanity everything it had ever wanted and more. The aliens had thought they were teaching humans about knowing their place in the galaxy. Instead, they had learned their own place in a universe where human creativity, adaptability, and determination had become the foundation of interstellar civilization, and the foundation was no longer free.